What's a harmless, non-serious secret you've kept forever? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. My mom was a meth addict, so my siblings and I grew up with very little. Normally, she would pull her head out of her jerk enough around the holiday season to sign up with a church or charity to get us a food box and some presents. However, by the time I was 11, she was so far gone, we could go weeks without seeing her leave her room or her be completely gone from the house. I entered a drawing contest at my school around this time. I won a 100 gift certificate to our local mall. One day, after making sure my siblings made it to school, I played hooky and walked to the mall about 3.5 miles. I bought my 3 siblings some presents, almost for gotta get myself something, ended up buying some discounted body wash, then had them wrapped there at the mall before trekking home. I hid the presents in the crawl space till the 24th. I was right, our mom did nothing. When my siblings were distracted by a movie, I snuck out and put the box of presents on the front porch before knocking and running away. I snuck back in the back door by the bathroom and heard my siblings yelling, "Someone left a box on the porch that says Merry Christmas." I had also spent the last week before winter break going door to door asking for canned food donations, saying it was for a food drive at my church. I didn't have a church, so that we didn't spend the whole winter break hungry. I'm so glad all 4 of us made it out of our childhood, and not one of us took the same path as the woman who birthed us. Edit spelling. Answer, shoot man, this hits close to home. Substances do things to people that no child should ever have to see. I was lucky to be the ignorant 3rd child asking why Dad had a talk with me before he left forever. My mom was shocked. I knew she and my great-grandpa kicked him out, but I didn't understand till much later he was kicked out because of the substances and me telling my gramps, "Can you keep my birthday money till we get to the store?" If Mom keeps it, Dad takes and buys his funny stuff, but I really want something this time. Story 2. My friend is a major passing cab for Cutie Fan. They came to our city a couple years ago, and I knew she wouldn't be able to afford the tickets to go. She was upbeat about it, but I know she was devastated by it. I bought tickets. 2 days before the show, I told her that the friend I originally planned to take couldn't go, and would she please come with me? There was no other friend. Told her I loved the band and would be sad to miss them. She, of course, accepted and had the time of her life. She's doing much better now, but every couple of Christmases or birthdays, she gets me some passing cab merchandise because she knows how much I love the band. I can't stand their music. I literally have them blocked on Spotify, but now it's gone too far where I can't tell her. Story 3. First marriage to my late wife. On the day of the wedding, the ring got stolen out of my car. I was freaking out. My 2 best men went into overdrive and took a picture I had of the ring and went to, I don't know how many jewelry stores explaining what had happened and if they had a ring that was similar. They went to this really great jewelry maker, so said, "I have something that is really close. Give me a bit and I can make it perfect." He worked his jerk off and got it done with about an hour to spare, plus the managed to get my window fixed. The 3 of us are the only ones who know. I ended up using that jewelry maker for any jewelry I needed, and well, I haven't stopped yet. He ended up telling my best men to not worry about the price and for me to come down after the honeymoon to work it out. I did, and he gave it to me at the cost of the materials. He is a great guy. He retired during COVID. Story 4. I was about 10 years old and was pretending to be sick to avoid going to school. This was the 1980s, so the old school, glass tube, mercury-filled thermometers were still a thing. My dad was getting ready to leave for work as I worked my magic to convince my mom to let me stay home for the day. Neither one of them was having it. I persisted. Out of frustration, my mom grabbed the thermometer and put it under my tongue. I knew it would read 98.6, and this was my only shot to avoid school for the day. Both of my parents stepped out of the room for a moment. I looked over and saw my dad's piping hot cup of coffee sitting on the counter, awaiting his morning commute. I quickly dipped the thermo into the hot Java. It instantly shattered, emptying the toxic mercury into the coffee, along with tiny shards of glass. I panicked. In my mind, there were only a couple possible outcomes. My dad dies of heavy metal poisoning and a lacerated esophagus. Or I fess up to what I did. I could hear them coming around the corner, about to return to the kitchen. At the last possible second, I swatted my dad's mug off the kitchen counter, smashing it on the floor, creating a coffee explosion in my mom's freshly cleaned kitchen. They burst in the kitchen aghast at the mess I created. I reply with a flurry of sorries and apologize profusely for being clumsy. My dad is furious because now he won't have coffee on his way to work. My mom is pissed and she starts cleaning up the mess. In the chaos, everyone forgets about my claims of illness. I slipped the remainder of the broken thermo into the trash and went to the bus stop, saving my father from a horrible passing, at least in my mind at the time. Until this day, I have never told anyone about this. Story 5. My mom is a health nut, with probably disordered eating, who wouldn't let us have cheese in the house when I was a kid. When I was mid-20s, I bought a unit, and my dad was helping me fix stuff up, so I provided lunch. I said to him, "Bet you're going to dislike going back to work next week and not have any cheese on your sandwiches?" It was then he told me his deepest secret. He had been buying blocks of cheese at work for years. I had no idea he was crafty, and my mom still doesn't. Poor dad has been retired for years, though, so not sure on the current cheese consumption status. Answer: my stepdad is in a similar conundrum now. He just recently had to give up driving, and my mom is deep into some, interesting health food ideas. He used to slip out and go to McDonald's to get some fries and maybe an apple pie. But now it's too far for him to walk with his bad knee, and he can't drive there anymore. I think my stepbrother treats him there occasionally, but it must be just one extra thorn in his side surrounding the loss of driving privileges. Story 6. One day I came home late at night tipsy and decided to walk my dog. Just when we arrived outside my house, my dog attacked a raccoon hanging around the area. I ended up wrestling my Malamute and freed the raccoon from his jaws. Here's the thing. I was tipsy, and the raccoon kinda just stared at me in front of me, and I decided to try and pet the raccoon. I got maybe one pet in before it took a chunk out of my finger. I ran into the house, leaving a trail of blood up to my brother's room for help. A sleepless night in the hospital and 4 consecutive rabies shots later was the result. Everyone asked me what happened, and I just told them while I heroically wrestled my dog to save the raccoon, I got bit in the process. They still don't know the real story. It still gets brought up 10 years later. Story 7. I convinced my sister I had entered us both in a blog giveaway. I won a coupon, but she won the grand prize, a $300 gift card to Lane Bryant. My sister was a size 16 and desperately needed new clothes, but would spend money on her baby grandkids and thin adult daughters. This was the only way I could make sure she spent it on herself. It's been 10 years. She doesn't know. Edit. Thank you, kind strangers. I'm glad she doesn't know what Reddit is, or she'd definitely figure this out. Story 8. If anyone was at the Hyatt Regency in Columbus, Oak, right before the Origins Game Fair in 2018, I have your white noise machine. You left it in the hotel room. I didn't even realize for half my stay. I was like, oh, this is actually really convenient, figuring it was just a new thing the hotel was doing. That is, until I visited my friend's room where they didn't have one, then noticed I could unplug the one in my room and realized it must have been left behind. I told the front desk about it, but they insisted it didn't need to be moved to a lost and found. Told them to tell me if anyone called looking for it, but no one did. So thank you, forgetful stranger. It has actually helped immensely with my sleep. Story 9. When my wife died, she'd been working on special occasion letters for all of our kids. Towards the end, the cancer had spread to her brain, and she wasn't able to focus on writing much, and when she did, it was often unintelligible gibberish. I tried to help her by taking dictation, but she said it would mean more if it was in her own handwriting and wanted to finish it. She slipped into a coma and died after only getting through a handful of letters for our eldest child, leaving addressed envelopes only for our other 2 kids. I knew this would be devastating for the 3 kids and possibly create conflict. So I paid a woman who specialized in calligraphy to literally duplicate my wife's handwriting. I gave her the content, channeling my wife's comments she made to me about what I thought would be meaningful words to our 3 kids when I had helped her dictate a few. And as she wanted, I have passed them out on special occasions of wedding dates, birth of first child dates, first day of college dates, etc. My kids don't know. They've even shared the ones she actually wrote with ones written by her surrogate, and thus far, the secret remains safe. I haven't told anyone else this but Reddit, and hope it stays here a secret as well. I'll take it to my grave. I consider it harmless as it was her intent, but cancer robs so much from people afflicted with it, including their best, most sincere attempts at helping others cope with the loss themselves. Edit. Wow, thank you for all the awards and comments of encouragement, gang. I'm humbled by some of the messages. Thank you. Answer. I love that you did this. You're a sincerely good person. I got my mom and I a mother-daughter letter, writing kit with prompts and stuff, and we were so excited to do it together. And then she got cancer, and all of a sudden, I think the idea of writing to Mimi's sister seemed too final, too scary, and she never would write back. I have a few handwritten, I love you notes that she wrote me when I was in elementary school, but it's not the same. Someone threw away a note I had on my desk a while back, and I almost had a breakdown. I still can't believe one of the only pieces of her handwriting I have, to me, is gone. Story 10. My wife lost one of her favorite pair of gold earrings her parents gave her. She could not find the other after weeks of trying. It had sentimental value as it was a 16th birthday gift, so I knew she'd never want another set. So I took the one she had around our big city to jewelers and shops until I found a matching one. Eventually found one, bought the pair, dirtied it up at home, and let her find it in her sock drawer. Still have the other hidden in my desk in case she loses the other. Story 11. I'm Canadian, and in high school, I had a crush on this girl who was originally born in the US. To try and impress her, I pretended I was an American who immigrated to Canada too. I was so committed that I even gave her the address of my old home. It was really just a hotel I had stayed in while on vacation in Florida with my family. Since it was the early 2000s, she never verified. We didn't end up dating, but to this day, I never came clean. I wonder if she still thinks I'm an American. Story 12. When I was dating my now wife, her son took my car for a joyride while we were out of town. When we got back from our out-of-town trip, I noticed something was amiss on my car. When I got in it, I noticed the sunshade was installed backwards. I would never do that on accident. I then pulled the dash cam footage. He took it around the neighborhood. He didn't do any donuts or burn any tires. Just a nice, slow stroll through the neighborhood with the music playing, and I assume waved in some people. I ended up just handling it man to man. He was like 17, 18 at the time. I never told his mom about it. Story 13. In 1998, I had a friend who was stuck in a very toxic situation at her home. She had an opportunity for a new start across country in Oregon. She had a Dodge Neon that was hanging on for dear life and decided to pass on the opportunity for fear the car wouldn't make the trip. I told her I had a friend that was a mechanic that owed me a favor, and he would give the car a tune-up for free. I didn't really have a friend that was a mechanic. We were both 18 with not much money, but I used all of my savings to pay to have her car made roadworthy for the trip. She's a mother of 4 now with a great job and thriving in Oregon. Answer. I took a sociology class in college that was basically about how difficult it is to move past hardships. The studies we read pointed to the primary reason people who are motivated to improve their lives' class situation don't is because of small roadblocks that are unmanageable without basic resources. Stuff like not having bus money to make it to a job interview or excessive paperwork, gatekeeping mental health resources, or not being able to move away because of a bad car. The people who overcome these blocks and are successful are nearly always people who had someone kindly give them a hand somewhere along the line. That was essentially the point of this whole course. It's small things that limit people, and success only really comes with help. You were that person for your friend, OP. Story 14. My dad is a doctor. When my daughter was little, she was terrified of hurting her ankle. Like any time she got the slightest twinge or rolled it slightly, she was convinced it was broken. My dad would take her to the office and run a fetal heart Doppler over her little ankle and tell her it was an X-ray machine and her ankle was fine. She's 13 and still convinced that Papa took actual X-rays of her ankle. I am never going to tell her otherwise. Story 15. When my brother was 4, he won a stuffed animal from a claw machine, and it was his favorite thing ever. Slept with it every night for weeks. He fell asleep on the couch and was carried to bed, but left his stuffed animal on the floor, and the dog decided to tear it to pieces during the night. I spent 40 trying to win another one and put it under his bed for him to find. Wow, didn't think this would blow up so much. Thank you for the awards and kind words. I'll do my best to pay them forward. Story 16. I can't remember why, but I was mad at my dad for something. As revenge, I added extra chili powder and hot sauce to our family chili. Turns out my family never really added enough seasoning to the chili as it was, and the food actually tasted a lot better as a result of my revenge tactic. I've overcorrected as an adult on seasoning food at times, but I do make a mean chili. Answer. Back when I was a little bastard, I poured hot sauce into my aunt's coffee. She was one of those coffee 3 meals a day people, so it was in an electric percolator she kept near the dining table. Anyways, we got into a bit of a fight, and that was my revenge. It's still spoke of here, almost 30 years later, mainly because of what she said when it was found. June, the coffee cold, but it tastes hot. Story 17. Every Thanksgiving in San Luis Obispo, my best friend and I are in charge of pies. We go to the Madonna Inn, a gloriously outlandish hotel, restaurant, bakery, resort, and ask for 2 of their pie boxes. We then go to Safeway and buy 2 much cheaper pies and put them in the boxes. We bring them to our large family gathering, and everyone compliments the wonderful pies because of how amazing the Madonna Inn's reputation is for baked desserts. I'd like to say this is because of concerns about cost or because the Safeway pies are better, but the truth is my BF and I have been doing this for about a decade now, and it's just become one of our favorite traditions together. Story 18. When I had just got my license, I was kind of an idiot, as are most 16-year-old boys. It was snowing, and I thought I would try to drift my car into a McDonald's parking lot from the road. I failed, obviously, and went down an embankment into another parking lot. Thankfully, my car was mostly okay. I had to replace a quarter panel and a headlight, but nothing too serious. I told my parents I was avoiding a head-on collision and hit black ice. I have never told them the truth, even though it has been 20 years since that incident. I could tell them, and they wouldn't care really, but I just haven't and probably never will. This is the first time I have ever told anyone the truth about that day. Story 19. Every Christmas, I would write a fake Christmas newsletter, like those letters some people send every year with updates about their life, family, etc., and send it to my parents. I made up this guy who was a huge blowhard, but believable enough that my dad thought maybe he had worked with him at some point in the past. I had a spreadsheet to keep track of his job, wife, children, grandchildren, holidays, etc., so that I could stay accurate from year to year. My parents would get so annoyed at his arrogant writing style, but I was really proud of it, LOL. It went on for 6 or 7 years, but then his twin granddaughters graduated high school and I stopped. Story 20. Only my immediate family know I threw a birthday party when I was 13 and no one came. I remember sitting at the window crying, looking out for any cars to come. I never told anyone else about this because I didn't want to seem like a massive loser, still don't. Even the kids who didn't turn up, I told them my neighbors and friends from extracurricular came, so even they don't know. Answer. Back in 8th grade in the 80s, I went to a birthday party for a newish, nerdy classmate with my best friend. We were the only people there. His mom seemed so sad and had ordered several party-sized pizzas. My friend and I then called all of our classmates and pressured them into coming. He was a nice kid and it must have sucked for him. I hope we made it a little better. Also, he's probably a tech giant now and making $1 bazillion. Story 21. As a previous nanny, I've seen many first steps and heard many first words, but I never share that. When I leave, I say something like, I think little one is so close to walking, talking. It's a special moment parents deserve. Who am I to take that from them? One baby was walking with me for a full 2 weeks before he showed his new trick to his parents. Answer, I wonder if my older son's daycare did that. We were moving and it was his last day at that daycare, and his care provider said, well, miss him. Too bad we won't get to see his first steps. He seems pretty close. We got home. Soon my mom arrived to help us move. And we were very surprised when he suddenly marched across the living room to Grandma. Maybe he'd really been working on that all day. Who knows? Story 22. When Elle was 10 and my younger brother was 5, Elle pranked him and scared him so badly he shit his pants. He cried, and Elle felt so bad that Elle cleaned him, his pants, and the place in the hall where he shoot. I never told anyone. At 10 years old, that shoot would have been hilarious to friends and family. Story 23. I was 7 and we were moving from one farm to a bigger one. Mom was taking garbage out to the burn barrel and burning it. In the rural 80s, we just burned everything. I started looking at the fire when she went back inside and discovered a burning ice cream lid. I picked it up and threw it like a frisbee, and it did a nice arc and landed right at a large stack of hay that was quite a ways away. I was horrified and went running in and told Mom some paper had floated up and onto the hay. Other than the huge stack of hay burning down there was no harm done. It was old hay anyway, that's why it wasn't stored in the barn. Story 24. I once told a girl I was dating I loved the dish she cooked for me. In reality, it was terrible. 25 years later, my wife is still cooking it at least once a month because it's my favorite. I've never been able to tell her, but now I've let my 8-year-old daughter in on it. She'll prance up to my wife and say, "Let's cook Daddy's favorite tonight." Then she turns around and looks me dead in the eye with a shoot-eating grin on her face. Story 25. My best friend in high school worked hard after school and on weekends in a butcher shop to earn money. He had healthy savings balance and really wanted an Xbox so we could play Halo, but his parents wouldn't let him buy one even though he'd earned more than enough on his own. I knew HTML, so I made a fake website for Australian Gaming Magazine advertising a competition to win an Xbox. He entered the competition and won it. We faked the email telling him he'd won. We bought an Xbox from the local store and went straight to the local post office and faked the sender's address on the label. 2 days later, it turned up at his home. He showed his parents the website, the email, and the postage, and they believed him. We spent the rest of the summer hanging out playing Halo. So good. Story 26. I farted in a physics tutoring class consisting of 6 to 10 people, including the tutor. A friend started yelling about the air conditioner having a bad smell. He suspected a bird or a mouse died there. Finally, we all had to move to continue the class in another room. Until this day, no one in this group knows that I farted. Answer. In 4th grade, I farted so loudly it actually stopped my teacher mid-lesson. We sat at desks that seated 2 kids, and those were clustered in small groups around the room. Well, that day, the boy next to me had been having issues, and when it got really quiet after my fart, he was like, "That was probably me. I've been farting all day." I couldn't believe he took credit. I made eye contact with another girl who sat near me and told her, "Sorry, Andrew." Hope you feel like a boss for stopping a lesson with a fart you didn't let out, though. Story 27. When I first met my wife's 93-year-old grandma about 13 years ago, she had me try her holiday dish, congealed salad. It's basically lime jello made with condensed milk, and it has pineapple, walnuts, marshmallows, and celery mixed in, and it is poured into a bundt cake pan to set. It's a terrible, old-timey Southern dish. She was so excited to let me try it that I panicked and said it was amazing. She absolutely lit up, and every year since then, she has exponentially increased the amount she makes because she knows how much I love it. The bundt cake pan has long since been replaced with a literal punch bowl. The rest of the family knows I dislike it, and it's just silently accepted that I will eat huge amounts of it each year instead of telling her the truth. Story 28. In 2009, my best friend was struggling to pay rent when his TV broke. So I went and bought him an, at the time, 42-inch HD TV for over $1,000. I knew he would never accept me spending that much as a gift. So I took it out of the box and put a few small scratches on the back of it and told him I bought a new TV and that he could have my old one that I didn't use anymore. Well, he's doing way better now financially, but he has no idea I did that, and I will never tell him. Story 29. When I was about 15 or 16, I had a sleepover with about 10 of my friends and my sister. I decided to have some fun with them and pretended to sleep talk. They recorded it on a cassette tape, and I figured it would just be a fun, harmless prank. Well, nearly 30 years later, they still keep bringing it up. They still don't know that I was faking, and I don't know how to tell them at this point because so much time has passed. That tape is still floating around. I dislike it when they bring it up and they think it's because I'm embarrassed about sleep talking, but the reality is it was just a stupid prank I played when I was a teenager, and I just never in a million years thought that it would still be going 3 decades later. I want this to just fudge die already, lol. Nobody knows my secret except for you, random strangers on Reddit. Answer. Luckily, not shared with as many people, but when we were young teenagers, I had a Ouija board. I totally faked being a spirit in the room and moved the Ouija piece to spell out words. Weeks later, we held a seance and I pretended to channel a French woman's spirit and spoke in a super fake French accent. It's now been about 30 years, and my best friend still brings up stories about these real spiritual encounters. I cringe every time. Story 30. I ate the crumble off the top of my mom's apple crisp and blamed it on the cat. Years after the cat passed, my parents tell the story of how she ate the crumble as a cute anecdote. Story 31. When my friend moved into her first apartment, she didn't have any tools for basic repairs. I spent a few hundred on a tool bag, socket set, screwdrivers, cordless drill, wrenches, level, etc. Took everything out of the packaging and gave her the bag of tools. I told her they were my extras and showed her how to do some of her repairs. She still doesn't know everything was brand new and, frankly, nicer than my own tool set. Story 32. I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 3. On my 9th birthday, my grandma made a birthday cake for me, which was big enough for us all to share at the family party. Since there was so much food, we had plenty of leftover cake for the next few days, which I was only allowed to eat a little bit of. When no one was around, I snuck into the kitchen and ate a couple slices of the leftover cake. Plus, I picked huge chunks of the icing off. It looked pretty haphazard by the time I snuck away again. My parents soon found the remains of the cake. Since I'm diabetic, they didn't suspect that it was me who picked at the leftovers. I was usually a very well-behaved kid. They blamed it on our rather chubby cat and promptly deemed it unacceptable for human consumption. It was a believable scenario because she had stolen human food in the past. Sadly, they threw the rest of the cake out. I could never own up to it because I would have been in trouble for compromising my blood sugar levels and for being greedy. My old cat never ratted me out for letting her take the blame, though. Thanks, Molly, R.I.P. Edit, I'm a woman, and this was the year 2000, before the medical technology we have now. Back then, I only checked my blood glucose at mealtime so the crime wouldn't have been evident till the next morning. And that's only if I was honest about my blood glucose level. There was no such thing as sliding scale dosage back then, so eating more cake was very much a bad idea, hence only being allowed a little bit. Edit 2. It was sitting out on the kitchen table and hadn't been wrapped up and put away yet, lol. It was butter icing, which made the cat theory a bit more believable. Edit 3. We didn't have such easy access to info like cats' taste receptors back then, so this didn't occur to my parents. Story 33. I bought a decommissioned fire chief's vehicle from the Richmond Fire Department auction and got them to donate it to my grandmother. She never would have accepted it if it came from a family member. Story 34. Dad, I lied that day in kindergarten when I said I had a tummy ache and needed to go home. I was totally fine. I was just super bored and wanted to spend time with you. Answer. My father was a doctor and a generally careful and organized person. When he passed away, I found among his papers a file that contained all the charts of my childhood illnesses, temperature graphs, timed updates, including the ones where I was clearly faking it to get out of school. Complaints of stomach pains, physical exam reveals no obvious cause, temp 97.1 remained at home for observation. Story 35. My mom, dad, people in our community kept spotting me driving to this back parking lot at a local government complex. They asked me what I was doing and told them it was a great place to stargaze because it was kind of off the main road. Even 20 years later, I still get comments if I'm going to go stargazing. No, that was my make-out intimacy spot in high school. I think they know. Story 36. I intentionally bombed a math competition in middle school because I didn't like the teacher over the program or being forced to do it by my parents. I blamed it on nerves and was not asked back. Answer. I was similarly forced to do a math competition prep program in middle school and also didn't like the teacher or the fact that I was being forced to do it. My secret is that I told all my friends I was going to bomb the qualifying test so I didn't have to continue to the competition. But my ego got the best of me and I tried my best in the qualifying test and still didn't make it. I was always the top student in every class, and people would have loved to see me be so humbled, and I deserved to be humbled, but everyone just believed I bombed it on purpose. Story 37. I once paid my mom's phone bill when I knew she was low on money. I got on her account on her phone while she was doing other things, and I know her passwords, so it was pretty easy. Added my card as a one-time payment only so it wouldn't save to her account and paid. She figured she just forgot she paid it, and that's why she thought she was low on money. My mom has ADHD and so am I, so forgetting stuff is very common. Story 38. When I was about 16 or 17, I wanted a cat so badly, and my mom had consistently been saying nope all my life. So I went in the classifieds at the back of the newspaper, found someone giving away free kittens, and I went and got one. When my mom came home that day, I told her that I met a man down by the docks with a cardboard box full of kittens, and he was going to throw it in the water if he couldn't get rid of them. So I took one. She did try to give her away a few times to various friends, but nobody wanted a kitten, and she got attached to her, to the point that she wouldn't let me take her with me when I moved out for university. She loves telling that story of how we ended up with a cat that I wasn't supposed to get, and that sweet baby lived to be almost 20 in the end. She brought home many mice and birds, and once, a weasel. I named her Turnip, after Baldrick's turnip in Blackadder, Rip Turnip. You lived a lie, but you were loved, and your fake origin story continues to delight at the dinner table. Answer. I did this a few years ago. Me and my sons were staying at my mom's house after a bad breakup. The cat we'd had for 20 years had died a few months earlier. She was a great cat. My mom was on a month-long trip with her mom, a cruise to Europe, and I decided I wanted another cat. I looked on Craigslist and found someone selling kittens for $40. There were two that I really liked, so instead of one cat, I ended up getting two cats. I had to take one of my sons with me, so I made him promise to never tell Graham that I bought the cats. He had to say someone was giving them away at the post office before taking them to the pound. So now we have two cats, with the boy cat being some ridiculously huge cat that throws his food dish on the ground when he's hungry. Story 39. I was playing checkers when someone taught me what stealing was. Board games at daycare had missing pieces sometimes, so I asked where some went. My friend told me they were probably stolen. At any rate, I learned what stealing was, and I took one checker. I kept it in my pocket until I got home and put it in my little kid's safe my grandma bought me. Then the next day I took it out and brought it back because I was so scared I would get into trouble for stealing. I haven't told anyone. Story 40. Man, my secret story is not as heartwarming as the others on here, but I feel like writing it out anyhow. My little sister loved dragons and collected little inexpensive statues and toys. I was 15 years old and had my first job working at Friendly's. I saved up my money to buy her something way out of my price range for her birthday. It was this tiny statue, over 100, a fortune for a teen, because it was adorable and perfect. A dragon just coming out of an egg. I was so excited to give it to her. My mom, who honestly has a novel's worth of issues, had no money and hadn't planned. 2 nights before my little sister's birthday, she told me she hasn't gotten her anything at all, so I gave it to my mom to give to her. It made me sad not to have much of a present for my sister. I gave her a card and some candy, but I knew her heart would break if mom gave her nothing. 30 years later, and I still haven't told. Story 41. When I was 20, I moved into a flat with 2 30-year-olds that were really selfish. They were charging double price for the 4th room. Now that I think of it, I was probably charged more than they were paying too in the house, so they both could pay less for their own rooms. I wanted to have a friend there to feel less alone, and my guy mate was first-year apprentice on low wages. I told him it was way cheaper, and he moved in. I told the 30-year-olds I would pay half his room if they let me have a friend move in. So yeah, he got subsidized rent because I needed a companion after a bad breakup. I ended up dating his best friend, and us 3 moved out into a better place without the 2 people who just wanted flatmates to make money off. And I married his best friend, and he is now a qualified electrician, making shoot loads of cash so we all win. Story 42. My daughter lost her favorite stuffed animal and was devastated. I went online and found a replacement on eBay for an insane price because it turns out her stuffed puppy was a collector's edition FML, and the one I found was in mint condition. I then rubbed it in dirt, washed it a few times, and ripped off its leather on its nose and filled it in with black permanent marker, all so it matched the one she had. We then told her that her puppy had been found, and the joy on her face made the expense and time it took crafting it well worth it. She is 13 now and still keeps her puppy on her bed. I plan to take this to my grave. Answer. When I was 6, we moved across the country to a new state. My comfort item was my pillow, Pilly. Being 6, I forgot it in a hotel room along the way, and I was devastated once I realized. My dad spent days calling hotels, and one day, he says they found my pillow and hands it to me. I realized pretty quickly it was just another old pillow and not the one I had grown up with for my whole life up to that point. But I knew he tried his hardest to find it, so I played along, and I still have that pillow. Neither of us has ever fessed up to that one. Story 43. My younger sister and I would sneak a Christmas present from under the tree, surgically remove the tape, carefully unwrap the gift to see what it is, and then wrap it back exactly how it was, put it back under the tree exactly how it was. Answer. My son told me he did this for several days before Christmas. It was the year we got him a programmable calculator he had been wanting, and he was pretty sure he was getting it. He sneaked down, unwrapped it, and wrote and debugged programs on it, then wrapped it back up and went back to sleep each night. And we never wondered why it had so many working programs on it Christmas morning. He admitted to this years later as an adult. A good laugh. Story 44. I used to live in a dorm hall when I was an undergrad. There was this one guy in the dorms who had a mat outside his door. I always thought it was a little weird because, 1, you had to walk a long way through carpet to get to the door, so your shoes would surely be mostly clean by that point, and 2, anyone could just simply take it. I kinda just assumed someone would steal it eventually, but after about a month, I noticed it was still there. I obviously wasn't going to steal someone's stuff, but I did want to mess with it, so I simply moved it to the door across the hall. The next day, I saw it had been moved back, so I decided to move it across the hall again. I did this for an entire year. Sometimes they'd give up and leave it at the other door for a week, then I'd just move it back to fudge with them. I love the idea that it surely led to some sort of argument between the 2 neighbors, because nobody is going to think some guy is just randomly deciding to fudge with them for no reason. I literally never met either of the people that lived in those rooms. I just kept messing with their mat. I had some special moments with it too. On Christmas, I replaced the mat with a Christmas one and then put the original one back the next day. On Easter, I bought the cheapest, shittiest Easter basket I could find and filled it with granny candies like Werther's and those strawberry candies. Then I hid it under the mat. At one point, I bought a second mat to just sometimes put at both doors, then take the second mat away randomly. Eventually, I moved into an apartment and couldn't mess with them anymore, though. They never got to find out WTF was going on. Answer. In college, I had a friend who told me he parked his Mustang in the back corner of one of the parking lots so far away that no one would ever park next to him. I was parking one day and noticed a blue Mustang in the back corner of the lot I was in. Let's call it Lot B. So I drove all the way back and parked directly next to it. I did this for a full semester. At the end of the semester, I told him it was me who had been parking next to him all semester, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" So I explained further, and he was like, my Mustang is red, and I always park in Lot A. That wasn't me. I am sorry, random blue Mustang person. Story 45. Every December 23rd, I leave an envelope with a few $100s on the windshield of the most beat-up car I can find in the Walmart parking lot and drive away. Never told a soul until right now. Story 46. At university, my best friend and I went to the bathroom on a night out, and as we were using the urinals, he exclaimed how Greg, a slightly older guy at the same school, was such a jerk. I pointed to a cubicle and mouthed how Greg was inside. My friend went bright red and died inside and permanently avoided Greg for the rest of our time there. Just the other day, about 5 years later, it came up, and I had totally forgotten. I finally told him I'd made it up. Story 47. I always knew my first boyfriend is gay, and still I agreed to be his GF at the time. He never told me that during the time we were together, and I've never initiated the conversation. We're from very conservative country, so I understand he was just super scared to come out, or even acknowledge he's gay. We have never done anything intimacy, but we could spend a lot of time together as friends, and it was awesome. We were 14, 15 at the time. He came out to me a few years later, and I never said anything. Many people tried to make me a victim on the way, but I'll protect this guy to the day I die. We love each other, my family, even though we don't talk as much anymore. I live in another country. Totally pure and awesome man. I'll always support him. Story 48. My mom lent my now mother-in-law her trifle dish for Christmas dinner. It was the last thing my mom had of her sister, as she had died suddenly that year. They were super close, and trifle was their thing. My mother-in-law dropped it, and she replaced it with the exact same one. No idea how, as the original was pretty old. We decided never to tell my mom. It's sort of a running joke now at Christmas. We wind my mother-in-law up, and every time it's mentioned, she is hysterical, having to relive the moment she dropped it all over again. Story 49. I pretend to like every video game my nephew loves. He is so sweet, and he always asks me if I like X video game, so I can play with him, and I always pretend I do, so that we can play together. I don't give a fig about video games, but I love spending time with him. And also, it's fun to pretend to be a kid and get excited about games, but it's spending time with him that really makes me happy. Story 50. I bought a surprise plane ticket to see my long-distance girlfriend after 1 year apart. She told me there was somebody else some days before the flight. Story 51. I love telling people I placed first in a national competition for Shotokan karate. So naturally, people assume I'm a really good fighter. I placed first in kata. I'm just really good at choreography. Story 52. I worked at Virgin Mobile, now Virgin Plus, so I sold people's phones and cell phone plans to them. I was closing by myself one evening at a kiosk in another mall. I had been asked to cover a shift when a woman came in pretty close to closing time, like maybe a half hour before. She had explained to me that a local women's shelter had given her money to get a SIM card and prepaid plan, and they had given her just enough to cover the first month of a specific plan we had. She was at the women's shelter after fleeing an abusive relationship, had to delete all her social media profiles, change her emails, phone number, and was even in the process of changing her name because her partner had almost eliminated her and was looking for her. I remember I could still see the bruises on her face and arms. Problem was, the shelter hadn't given her enough to cover the taxes. I live in Canada, in a province where the tax rate is 15, or the SIM card fee. She told me she just had to check her bank account to see if there was money in there to pay, even though her ex had drained it after he discovered she'd ran. If she covered the taxes herself, she would have had less than $2 left to her name and the clothes on her back. My heart ached for her, being a survivor of domestic abuse myself. I got her phone number and first top-up all set up, and when it got to the total owed, she had taken out her debit card, and I just told her not to worry about it. I didn't make her pay for any of it because I couldn't possibly fathom leaving this woman with no money when she was already scared, hurt, and starting her entire life over. She immediately started sobbing, thanked me for being so kind, hugged me, and left. I've never told anybody except my current partner, and definitely nobody I worked with. Story 53. I had my niece remind my sister that it was our mom's 70th birthday, no party because it was the height of the COVID pandemic. After my mom lamented that my siblings hadn't said happy birthday, I still haven't told my mom. Story 54. My parents bought me a book of world history when I was a child. It had beautiful illustrations. They know it was one of my favorite books growing up. What they don't know is the fact that those beautiful illustrations were frequently of naked women, was a significant factor in it being one of my favorite books. I did wind up with a lifelong love of reading and history, so mission accomplished. Story 55. When I was younger, 15-year-old, I used to secretly go down to our living room and out the back door to smoke. Our house had an alarm with sensors, including one upstairs in my parents' bedroom, which would start blinking if it registered movement. I was just able to watch the terminal from the backyard to the hallway to detect movement and not get caught, hopefully. My dad, whom I lost 3 years ago due to COVID, was a diabetic and frequently came downstairs for some sweets because his blood sugar would get too low. One night, I went down and did the usual, slide aside the slats as quietly as possible, open door, have a quick smoke, and back to my room like a ninja. Suddenly, the terminal starts to flicker. I flick the cig across the fence and try to slide the slats back the way they were as fast and quiet as possible before he reaches the bottom of the stairs. No way I make it past him, so I hide behind the couch. He comes down, grabs some sweets, and he sits down on the same couch I'm behind. My heartbeat must have been over 200 BPM at that time, but I remain silent until he gets up to go back to bed. He never knew I was there, otherwise I might have lost him sooner. But it makes for a good laugh with my mom these days. Story 56. At our 6th grade Halloween party, I found my crush's favorite watch in the garbage bin with a broken band. Took it out, fixed it, gave it back to her. When her friend pestered me, "Why would you fix that for her?" I lied and said someone else told me to, not wanting to be found out for having feelings for her. Story 57. As a kid, I constantly got in trouble for putting things in my mouth. One day when I was about 6, I accidentally swallowed a couple of coin, leavened through the massive episode of violent vomiting and subsequent hospital visit. I never confessed to swallowing the coin because I didn't want to get in trouble. Story 58. In kindergarten, some kid I didn't know too well took one of those plastic clips that hold bread bags together, snapped it in half and gave me one of the pieces, saying, "This is your key to the magic door, and this one is my key to the magic door." And then he left. That seemed reasonable to me, so I took it home and poked it into any properly sized indentation I could find to try and find the magic door that it unlocked. After accidentally unscrewing a couple of outlet covers from the wall, I eventually got bored and lost the key somewhere. But a few days later, it hit me. I had just taken that crappy half of a plastic tab from the kindergarten without asking a grown-up. That was stealing. I was a pretty straight-edged kid, so stealing anything at all was about the worst misdeed I could imagine. But here I was, having outright robbed my own school of this valuable object, and nobody even knew about it. Anyway, I resolved to never tell anybody about my horrible crime, and it has remained a secret until this very day. I hope all of you out there can forgive me. Story 59. When I was like 9, my parents had incense, and I thought it was plant substance, so I tried to smoke it out of an incense waterfall machine. Didn't go well. Story 60. My freshman year of high school, my math teacher was a young, lonely woman. To be fair, she overshared a little bit and indicated to us that she really wanted to get married but couldn't find anyone. Somehow, these immature freshmen all let it go. They never made fun of her. Nobody ever did. Literally 0 jokes were ever made at her expense, at least not that I ever knew about. That was the state of affairs until my senior year, when the school hired a new math teacher for seniors. He was roughly the same age as my freshman year math teacher, and he gave off sad, lonely guy vibes. But nobody ever made fun of him either, somehow. About halfway through my senior year, I was wandering around the halls during class for some reason or another. I passed by the freshman teacher's classroom and stopped. There, I saw the two of them standing together in her classroom. They were holding hands, making googly eyes and smiling at each other. They never saw me. I started walking again, determined to act like I saw nothing. I never told anyone because I was concerned that if those teachers hadn't been made fun of for being unhappily single, which was sort of a miracle, then their luck could run out now, and they might be subjected to inappropriate jokes for finally meeting someone. And I didn't want that. A fight, which isn't saying much. Their relationship never became public knowledge while they worked together at the school. Story 61. When I was a teenager, I threw a relatively small house party while my parents were away on holiday. The wooden floor in one room got scratched somehow during it, and when my parents came home and noticed, I confessed by telling them I had tried using a skateboard on the treadmill, but it slipped and damaged the wood. My mom still brings it up as an example of how I'd be a terrible criminal and could never get away with anything. Story 62. I worked at a place that didn't like to give raises. In an effort to justify it, they would write people up for nonsense around review time and fill people's employee files with petty write-ups. I would go into work early and purge the files, removing anything negative. Story 63. When I went to college, my parents sold my childhood home and moved to a different town about an hour away. We were all sad to leave it, but it didn't make sense for them to stay there with an empty nest. About a decade and a half later, we learned through the grapevine that it had again been sold to a developer who planned to massively renovate it, which would render it unrecognizable. Mom and I decided to drive by to see the house one last time before that happened. It was sad to pull up to the house and see that they had already torn up the lawn and bushes I had planted with my dad when I was a kid, but the house was still untouched. Mom waited in the car while I went to peek in the window next to the front door. Well, when I was a teenager, I was pretty skinny and used to get into the house by sticking my arm through the mail slot rather than ever carrying a key. The place was completely empty, and I impulsively decided to just go for it. My arm barely fit, but I managed to unlock the door and got to have the experience of walking through my childhood home one last time. It was an indescribably meaningful experience for me to relive old memories in that space. On my way back to the car, I noticed a little statue peeking out from under the porch. It must have been hidden in the bushes for years, and lo and behold, it turned out to be a bunny statue that had belonged to my mom. I grabbed it and ran back to the car, and my mom floored it out of there before any nosy neighbors noticed us. We drove away laughing our heads off, and she still has the bunny statue in her garden to this day. Story 64. My wife was a young mom. She still dated, but for years she protected Valentine's Day for her and her son. When she moved into our current house, the V-Day tradition became getting dinner at the local diner. One of the first years doing this, they went to pay and were told that someone had paid it forward because they thought it was cute seeing a mom and her kid out on Valentine's Day. They have done the same pay it forward every year since. These days, her and I will often spend Valentine's Day together, but the three of us still go to that diner within a few days of V-Day and still pay forward the bill. Anyway, the secret I've kept is that the initial pay for her and her son was her dad. He knew about the tradition of going to the diner together and called the diner ahead of time with her name and gave his credit card info to cover it. He told me this in confidence, so I have kept the secret for him and always played dumb on Valentine's Day about how that cute tradition ever started. Story 65. When I was 6, my older brother and I were pondering what the female versions of our names would be. I decided mine, Nate, would be Natalie, but my brother cuts me off before I could declare and said, "You think yours is Natalie, don't you?" No, I stammered back and refused to tell him the real name. Fast forward over 2 decades to today, we're in our early 30s, and somehow that convo comes back up. He laughs and says, "It was Natalie, wasn't it?" In my head, the ancient pride of a tinier version of me roars and demands I refuse to acknowledge he was right. Every other part of my brain facepalms at how ridiculous a hill to die on this is, and we compromise by telling him, "What argument? Sorry, I don't remember that." "Oh, I remember, dear brother, but I will never confess." Story 66. Crashed my mom's drone a few years ago, fixed the wings and hid the evidence. No one knows but me. Not anymore, I guess. Story 67. My 6-year-old nephew comes over and helps me do Legos, do yard work, helps me bake and plant my garden. One spring, he helped me start my garden, but he left before we got to plant the carrots. I told him I would plant them later. BTW, he has a great memory. Well, fast forward to late summer, and he called and wanted to know if the carrots were ready to pick. I never planted them. I went to the market, bought some carrots, and put them all in the ground. He came over and helped me dig them out. He was so excited. My wife showed everybody. Facebook, friends, relatives. Grandfather said, "Wow, those are best-looking carrots I've ever seen. Mine never come out like those." Lol, I never told anyone my secret. Story 68. When I was in high school, I disappointed my mom by having an F in math. I've never been good at math, and I kind of dislike math to this day. Anyway, my grandma sat me down and told me she was going to tell me a secret that no one ever knew, not even my mom. And she made me promise to never tell anyone until she had passed. She told me she, too, had gotten an F in math in high school, and so she wasn't mad at me, and she understood, and it was okay. My grandma passed in 2020, and I've never told my mom that story. I don't know if I ever will. Story 69. Every time I get invited over to a family's house during the Christmas season, but before Christmas Day, I always sneak an extra present under someone's tree. I put the full name of the intended recipient on the present, but I leave the from section blank or use an alias. It's usually something easy, like a blanket or bath stuff or a fire stick or chocolate box or whatever. One year, my friend got socked by a bunch of different life expenses, and he knew he probably wasn't getting much of anything from his wife as a result. So I snuck a tactical flashlight under his tree and listed Santa in the from part. I knew he wanted something like that, So I got it for him and deposited it under his tree when they invited me over for dinner about a week ahead of time. It made his whole Christmas to open it up on Christmas Day. At first, he was convinced his wife gave it to him, but she denied it, and her handwriting doesn't match mine. To this day, they don't know it was me who gave it to him, but he still mentions how happy he was even now sometimes. Story 70. There was one time when my boyfriend and I forgot there was rice in the rice cooker and it got flies. I eventually remembered and went to clean it out and got so grossed out that I couldn't do it. A little later, we were cleaning the kitchen and I casually asked my boyfriend to clean the rice cooker. Knowing it was full of gross, he opened it, was incredibly grossed out, but still cleaned it. It's been years since this happened, but I've been so embarrassed by my conduct that I've never admitted that I knowingly sent him to take down the rice cooker. I feel like I owe him an apology, but that would require me to admit it, and I can't. We're a very open couple and have had much more difficult conversations, just the usual relationship stuff that rises in an LTR. But for some reason, this incredibly low-stakes secret just makes me cringe so hard that I can't bring myself to say anything. I will take the secret to my grave. Answer: sometimes low-stakes secrets are the hardest to come clean about. I am engaged to my partner of nearly 7 years. At the beginning of our relationship, I lied about having a particular medical condition because I didn't want to explain the very similar but less well-known medical condition I actually have. And telling him the common one he'd recognize and understand seems so much easier. It doesn't really matter because the symptoms are so similar and what I need help with is the same. He wouldn't be upset and would understand why I took the path of convenience and slightly fudged the specifics. I don't know why I can't bring myself to come clean about this. I basically told him I have ear damage and can't hear well. I actually have a neurological issue and can't hear well. Either way, I can't hear well. I don't know why I can't tell him it's actually my brain. Story 71. One day when I came from homeschool, my mom had locked me out of the house. So I went into the jitty and randomly decided to skim some stones. The milkman had come and left 4 milk bottles near our gate, so I casually skimmed a stone at them and managed to smash all of them with 1 stone. Told my mom it was like that when I got there. Mom got annoyed at the other rascals that were around and not me. Complete win. I also stole someone's milk from their doorstep one day when I was around 11 because we had no milk and I wanted a cup of tea. Story 72. I stole 5 off my dad's dresser back in the mid-90s when I was 12. He spent a solid hour looking for it and was convinced he threw it out. Story 73. At a Six Flags amusement park I went to with my kids, they had a live magician show, and I got called onto the stage to be a participant in the magician's mind-reading trick, involving the magician drawing something on a pad the audience could see and then telepathically transmitting the image to me to draw. Or maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember. To be sure I could not see or hear anything, a helmet contraption was placed on my head, covering my eyes and ears. Once the helmet was in place, a recording only I could hear played, telling me that everybody in the audience was there to enjoy a good time, urging me not to spoil the fun, then instructing me to draw a triangle, point downward, on the pad of paper in front of me that I couldn't even see, then draw a small rectangle that was taller than it was wide on the top, flat part of the triangle, then draw a star on the point at the bottom of the triangle. The audience was very impressed that I had drawn the magician's Christmas tree, only upside down. Right before the helmet came off, the recording urged me not to tell anyone how the trick was done. Story 74. I hid my tooth under my pillow for the tooth fairy to find and give me money. I knew it was my dad giving me money, so after he slipped cash under my pillow and threw the tooth away, I sifted through the trash and showed it to him and said I lost another tooth. I got an extra $20. Story 75. My son was really into digging holes when he was 6. Had a 3 hurrah deep one going in the yard because he was convinced he was on top of some old ruins. Kept bringing small old things into the house that he was so excited he discovered and displayed them in his room after cleaning them. To this day, he doesn't know he'd been going to the flea market every Saturday and buying small bits of old-looking junk and planting them in the hole for him to find. Story 76. I was, in fact, too lazy to fill in and send the paperwork to sign up for university. I went to the introduction week knowing that and pretended it got lost in the mail and signed up on the spot. Yes, that is how I got into a top 100 university. There was plenty of space. I wouldn't recommend it, though. Story 77. I've always been a night owl. When I was in elementary school, I'd slip into the living room and watch late-night TV until the channels went off the air. Story 78. When I tell people I read a lot, I leave out that it's fan fiction, Dramione fan fiction. That semi-explicit Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger. I know, it's My secret shame. Fan fiction. It's awkward when people want to know what I'm reading, and I have to make something up. I'm so deep in the closet, I'm rubbing shoulders with Tom Cruise here. Answer. This is hilarious. I didn't even know this was a thing, but now I have to admit I'm a wee bit curious. It's awkward when people want to know what I'm reading, and I have to make something up. This. I read fan fiction too. Everyone thinks of me as a bookworm, but when they ask for recommendations, I have to peruse the bestseller list and pick one at random. Then I have to read the summary because sometimes they actually read the book and want to discuss. Story 79. My last day at the restaurant I worked at in college, somebody broke into 2 workers' cars. 2,000 total was stolen. One, a guy whose car broke down and was in the shop, and he was borrowing his friend's car. His cash was to pay for his own car. One, a single mom who was saving up for her community college tuition for the next semester. Both completely broke down in the office when they learned about it. I was closing that night, so I went into the manager's office when it was just the 2 of us and pulled my own cash savings for the month, about $1,400, and split it $600, $800. Asked the manager to put them in unmarked envelopes and give them to the servers on their next shift. I never saw a single person from that restaurant again. I checked the guy server's Facebook a couple days later, and he had posted, "God is so good," so I know he got the money. I have no idea where they're at now, but I hope they're in better places. Story 80. In 2015, my dad's beloved German Shepherd doggo Zepp died, and he became quietly distraught. Mom had almost never seen him so sad and was genuinely concerned about him. He ended up making a YouTube video about Zepp and posted it online. I secretly went and bought him a few thousand views for that vid and another vid he'd previously made, and over the next several days, weeks, as the views came in, he became very excited and started to smile again. I never told anyone but my sister. Mom can't keep a secret low. I just checked and it's at 1.9K views. Story 81. I don't like popcorn. It's just not good. My wife loves popcorn, and she gets excited that it's something little that we share. She loves going to the movies and getting a big popcorn for us to share, or making it at home and making sure we split it. I just love seeing the look on her face in the evening when she looks over and asks, "Should we make a little popcorn?" Like it's a little naughty thing we're doing, lol. It makes her so happy, and I'll eat it until I die for that result. Story 82. I helped a friend out with ad money on her blog and views and YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more content like this, you might be interested to know that I've created another channel with a similar theme, especially for those of you who enjoy what I do. I'll leave a link in the description, and I hope to see you there. Take care.